Okay, call together the East Side Planning and Zoning Commission regular meeting for August 25th, 2020. Town of East Haddam, could we have the attendance, please?
Barry Brownell,
Here.
James Curtin,
Here.
Richard Pettinelli,
Here.
Justin Anderson,
Here, sir.
Bernard Gillis,
Here.
Ed Gubbins,
Here.
Louis Salakruk,
Here.
Susan Kinsman, absent, Joe Zaid, absent.
Okay, let's go over the minutes of our past meeting. It was in July 28th, 2020.
And one thing on page 3, it's not big, you can see the airport in the second paragraph. I didn't know whether that, I did ask around about the cases, was that the right amount? It was 21 and 3 deaths? That's what I thought.
Including?
So the numbers have varied.
Now they've changed?
Yeah, well, going back to that, they were only listing one, but we knew of 2 or 3 actually. But that was a cumulative number to date. It's up over 28 cases now and 1 death
One death.
as of Monday.
So we should change the 3 deaths to 1.
Well, technically that's what was discussed, so you would leave that in the
Yeah,
minutes.
that's what it stated at the time.
And, let's see. Okay, on page 4, top of the page, second. I think it's setting the setback line at 150 feet to the site.
Right, we were discussing the curb line.
Yeah, I mean, that got mixed into it, but
What, setback
the
one?
setback line,
Okay.
that was it.
Okay, anything else? Let's see. Okay, we'll accept the minutes as amended. I got no bills.
No bills.
So-
No,
Okay, discussion. With the selectmen. Rob, do you need to call your board into session?
No, because we're guests of you tonight, so.
Okay, because even if we are a guest of another commission, we still have to, regulatorily, we have to call an order. So that's why I'm
I was
asking.
told I did not have to because we've been invited here and we're not discussing.
Okay.
it. So,
Okay, which I'm surprised about that.
I was a little bit too, but that's what I was.
Okay, I guess the purpose of this meeting is, the invitation to the Board of Selectmen is that, I forget what date it was, there had been a rally that had been on the front steps of this building for Black Lives Matter. I guess it had become, I'm not gonna say it was contentious in any way or form, but when you started looking at social media, the East Haddam Planning and Zoning Commission, people were like, I can't believe they're not saying anything. You guys, you're being called out as being a racist body. I waited until the commission had its next meeting, that we could discuss it as a body, as a commission, because it was not directed at any single person, but at the commission as a whole. It was the decision of this commission that we wanted to invite your commission in, the 3 of you, to discuss this and find out why we were being called out. And people were very upset about it. People could lose their jobs over over things that were said in public, on the record, and the ramifications of all that. We're all here as volunteers. We don't get paid for this. And if someone loses their job because they're pinned as being a racist person on a racist board, and the firm that they work for finds out about that, it could have serious consequences. And that's why we're here to discuss that, to discuss the ramifications of what public officials, elected public officials, say in public about other elected public officials and the accountability of those statements. So, that being said, I will.
Well, I mean, how the hell did that happen, that zoning would ever get accused of being involved in any kind of racism? I mean, I've been on here for probably a total of 20 years, and I haven't heard that word even mentioned once or any conversation about any of that. So, I know everybody's searching for racism behind every tree in town, but I just, what the hell are we talking about? And, you know, I mean, pointing the finger at other boards, when I don't even know what the hell you're talking about. This is, we're getting a little crazy. So, I mean, what I'm looking for is, how did this happen? How did we get to the point where Facebook is mentioning zoning as some racist group?
Well,
I mean,
go ahead.
I think we're all addressing me in various ways. So all of you have in front of me the speech that was given on that day. I do not believe that I called out this board in any specific manner. What you might not know about me is that I work at the state as a policy analyst for the Planning and Development Committee at the state legislature. So one of the things I am engaged in a lot is conversations about segregation and planning and zoning. And what I was attempting to do with my speech, and if you look at it and read through it, which is why I provided it, I was talking about the larger state of segregation in Connecticut. I also was imploring all of us, and I say that myself included, to examine our the implicit biases we have. And I didn't talk about this Planning and Zoning Commission in specific. I talked about how we need to address racism within our medical institutions, how all of us have implicit biases that we need to reflect on, and how it shows up. So if you look specifically at my words, I say planning and zoning boards in our towns, which means inclusive. I talked about how how hospitals let people of color disproportionately die. I talked about how school systems, again, talking in a general sense about the state of Connecticut, about various institutions and where racism and discrimination has failed people of color in our state. And I felt that what ended up happening on Facebook was that people with other motivations, and that's why I provided the transcript of my speech so you can all review it, people with other motivations decided to make it political, decided to put words in my mouth and of me calling you all racist, which I never did, and that was never my intention. And that's where we are here today. And so I came and talked to Jim after the event had passed to make sure that he understood that I specifically wasn't talking specifically about the land use office or specifically about our town. And I think I am deeply sorry that my words were misconstrued in a way that you all believed I called the people sitting on these boards racist, because I'm deeply, deeply grateful. And I actually don't know what we are going to do to continue to keep boards and commissions full of volunteers as we move forward. And that's a concern of mine, and it would never be my intention to specifically call anyone on this board racist. And what I truly was intending to do was engage the crowd in reflecting on how our own implicit biases show up in the institutions that we're part of, and how do we all take action within our own institutions to make sure that we address those biases and start to address some of the systemic racism we see in Connecticut and in our state and in our country.
So, I've been involved in land development for 35 years. I've probably read half of the zoning regulations in the state of Connecticut, and that's not an exaggeration. I can attest I have never read anything that excludes a race or a specific person. I have read minimum land value, land areas, restricted uses for commercial and industrial, and everything else. They all align with plans of conservation and development. So I don't agree that planning is racist. It is what is the establishment in Connecticut, unless we want to rip it apart and try again and go with all the ancillary things that happen. You know, so we increase density, we're increasing roads, we don't have water supply, we don't have sewers, it can go on and on. I've never seen a law or planning regulation geared towards excluding a group. I have seen them geared towards excluding or restricting development in recognition of the restrictions that the geography faces or that the town desires through its planning, conservation, and development. Nothing of that is here. It says planning and zoning boards keep our towns predominantly white.
Right,
You
and
do
so
this in the state.
there is
Tell me where a
research.
zoning regulation tells me it has to be white.
So I don't think there's any specific zoning regulation anywhere written in the state of Connecticut that says you must maintain this X, Y, and Z as white. I do think there's a plethora of research that says that without multi-types of affordable housing, multi-use housing, it makes it so that people aren't able to access other
So
towns.
it's financial restrictions.
It's financial restrictions,
Where
and
is that race-based?
there's a lot of research that looks at that, and I can provide that to the board.
But here's the thing, like, do you think like Will Smith can't buy property in East Haddam or anywhere in Connecticut for that matter?
No, and that's not what I'm implying at all. Again, I'm saying
It
all of
certainly
us
sounds
need
like
to
that.
look at the systems that exist that make it so we don't look like the state of Connecticut. The state of Connecticut is 30% white. I'm just saying, we all just kind of need to reflect on, and again, a lot of times, none of this is written into law. It's the way that it ends up being practiced. That it's not implicit and intentional, any of these laws around racism. It's somehow on the other side how it ends up in practice that we see that we live in a very segregated state, and there's
Again, I've been through, I can't count the number of zoning board regulations or zoning boards I've been at. 30 years. Do the math. Easily 1 or 2 a month. Hundreds. I have never been called a racist. I've had 300 people angry with me, and they never played the race card. I've never seen a board, whether I'm the applicant or representing an applicant, or I'm watching the 6 public hearings before me. I've never seen a board act in a racist manner. They enact the zoning regulations that are decided by the town through public process.
I would just like, you know, personally, like I'm running for Congress right now, okay? It's essentially by association, if I'm on the planning and boarding zone, planning and zoning board, and it seems as though you're stating that we're racist, you're thereby calling me a racist. I mean, that's a huge thing when I'm running a campaign, you're essentially labeling me a racist in doing so. Now, let me use these are your words right here, okay? I've been thinking about how my work and the work I would demand on my community, your community, is realized in the complicity that we all have in the system. So you're saying our community, your words, we are complicit in this racism. These are your words. I've been thinking a lot about what it means to be a white person in a leadership role here in East Haddam in a predominantly white town. So these are your words. You're in a leadership role in this town. Your words. I've been thinking about how it was to work, or how it happens now. Let me jump over here. In tandem with voting, showing up and being outraged that we allow planning and zoning boards to keep our towns predominantly white. So you were talking about your leadership role, you're talking about your community, you're saying your community is complicit, and you're saying that the planning and zoning boards are essentially racist. Those are all your words, right from here. That's all in here.
But can I add one thing to that? Because what you did leave off here was the beginning. You stood on the steps and you introduced yourself as a select woman in this town. What that did was brought the focus right here to us sitting in this room. When you continued on and brought planning and zoning, and we can drop an S here, very easy, and say, planning and zoning boards to keep our town predominantly white, okay? People heard that. That's what people heard, and that's where the outrage, and that's where the implications have come.
And again, I also said I've been thinking about how our school systems, how our hospitals, I was talking in abstract, and most people,
Yeah, but you do make it sound like people are doing things on purpose. Like, for instance, black people are dying in hospitals more than, let's say, white people do. I'm sure they do. But I'm sure their health has a lot to do with it. I mean, nobody's keeping, I mean, poor people have a hard time buying houses anywhere in the world because houses cost a lot of money. Not just East Hanover. And I mean, if you've talked to black people, I picked up a black kid, and I'll just tell you the story, because at Gillette's Castle with a gas can about, this now it was 2 years ago. Got in the car and we drove about 100 feet, and the first thing out of his mouth was, how the hell can anybody live here? There's nothing here. He's only from Norwich, that's not even a city by any standards, but I don't think there's no black people here because we're keeping them out. I think they're really not that interested in rural living. That kid was horrified by the thought that, see, there's nothing here. I mean, it's just, I don't think people are doing these things on purpose. Yes, houses cost a lot of money and poor people can't afford houses, but is that news to anybody or what? That's anywhere in the world. And nobody's doing it on purpose. Houses cost money. And, you know, and our job is to maintain property values for the people who have invested their life fortune in their house and don't want to see a shack built right next to them. I mean, I don't know. I'm more of a like, I don't see racism in East Hanover, so pardon me, I probably won't agree with you. But I mean, you imply that it's here and people are doing things, like the hospitals. You really think they're letting them die? I really don't. I just think this is, just because the statistics tell you that more of this is happening here or there, doesn't mean people do things on purpose. It is the way it is. Crime, I mean, yeah, look at the inner city, it's loaded. Yeah. Is that white people's fault? I mean, you know, I just don't feel that it's anybody's fault. This is what's happening, certain cultures have been built up, and there's a heavy price to pay all the way around for all of us probably, but I don't think people are doing all this necessarily on purpose, and I don't think black people are doing it for themselves on purpose, but look at the murders. And since George Floyd died, I think over 2,000 black people were killed by black people. Yeah, they're worried about 3 deaths or something now the police kill. And the police get condemned, but you just killed 2,000 people of your own. Are we worried about Black Lives Matter then? I mean, yeah, we should be. But holy mackerel, it's not white people killing them. You know, I just think some of this is just getting out of hand with trying to blame somebody for stuff. You know? I mean, we all need to look at ourselves and decide what we do. Individually, we do the best we can. I have black friends. I don't have a lot of them. I grew up here. There aren't many, but I have a few. You know, I just, you know, I mean, I know you're looking for it everywhere, it seems, but I just don't buy it. Sorry. And I do resent mentioning it to zoning because I'm from 20 years of being on the board. Nobody's thinking about who buys a house means nothing to us and has nothing to do with what we do. And I don't care who comes here, what color they may be, we treat them fairly. I mean, and I know that from Jim and from Prairie and the rest of us. Just another person. We just don't, I mean, and poor people, sure. And I've argued with Jim about setbacks from wetlands. I love that one. It's my favorite. You know, when they went to 100 feet, that was 77% more land taken. That's a lot. I mean, those are issues. But I think that's still race.
You know, I don't think anybody on the board has any reason to doubt your sincerity of not labeling us racist. But whether you identify yourself or not, you are a public official. And what you say in public carries more weight. And people listen, and people identify with it. And I find these words poorly chosen. If I had gone out and mouthed off about whatever in public, hit the paper, hit social media, I have every right, or I have every expectation my company would fire me. Because my words as a manager carry weight. And I reflect on the company. So whether you intended it or not, it was interpreted, you know, via social media proof, it's interpreted that that's how people were reacting to it. And we're now paying the price. And I find that a poor choice of words.
I also think that where it was held, on the steps of the municipal office building, just magnified everything. If it were held anywhere else, there may not have been the media that was attached to it. And there might not have been, all of the outrage that was attached to it. But being held here, on our front steps, on the front steps of the first selectman's door, I just think was also a very bad choice. I talked to Rob before it even happened and asked him to please reconsider having it held there.
Well, I guess we could just, if in the future we can avoid pointing the finger at each other, I mean, we'll promise not to call you anything, and you can promise not to call us anything, and we should be good. You
Would
know,
would an
nothing-
apology on Facebook be appropriate on behalf of the selectmen's office?
I think Facebook should be eliminated.
I agree.
Yeah.
Well, that's a whole different
That's-
question,
that's-
but
yeah.
Well, it exists, and.
this
Yeah,
was
because-
spread on Facebook.
And I'm the easiest one on, the reason I have low blood pressure is I don't go on Facebook.
Yeah, I don't.
That's,
I'm not-
that's right then and there, and so to add anything to that medium,
So you
just,
think this is an unreasonable request on my behalf?
I think let's,
Absolutely.
I think, yeah.
I can tell you,
And what's your complicity in all of this?
my complicity is that you're all part of my administration.
You agree with what she said?
I agree that what she said did not specifically identify this board, this commission.
That's
I
quite-
was there.
That's quite the two-step.
No?
Well, I'd have to say,
I agree that what she said did not address this commission. Now, did some people apparently feel that it did, Lou? Yes. But I don't go on Facebook for the very simple reason that stuff is exaggerated and then blown out of proportion immediately, and people often have agendas. So I don't know who had all the
Well, I
stuff.
think some clarification should be made and should get out to the town somehow.
I also was there and I heard what everybody else here heard. I'm sorry, and I called you up right away, Teresa. And I said, what was your intent here? Because that was totally not right. And you're explaining to me what you explained to them. But I heard exactly what I just read. Planning and zoning boards to keep our town predominantly white.
And again, so we don't have a hospital in East Haddam, right? So when I'm saying, when we're looking at asking, we let hospitals, people of color die disproportionately in hospitals, and the research shows that when you hold for all other factors, including wealth and pre-existing health conditions, people of color still die disproportionately in hospitals. I'm talking again and so again, this for me was about the abstract, about reflecting.
I mean, once again, this is the issue and how you crafted this. And when you're talking to an audience, like you specifically say, I will demand of my community to realize the complicity, okay?
Right, and so this is
So-
part
so-
of the conversation, right,
But
is,
you're bringing the conversation to this community, which is complicit, okay? And then you're saying that, in a leadership role, what it means to be a white person, in a predominantly white town. So now we're talking about our town, we're talking about our town's complicit, these are all your words. And then you bring up, okay, so in the abstract, you bring up the planning and zoning. But you gotta understand, you've already led everybody in that audience to believe that we're talking about our town that's predominantly white, your words, that's complicit in this, your words, and then you bring up planning and zoning as an issue and racist. You see how that all flows into one thought process, even though, the sleight of hand essentially when you bring up planning and zoning. As this comes out, Kelly was saying when she was there, I mean, you set this up for this to be your town, for your town to be complicit,
and
for your town
going
to be
back
predominantly
to-
white, and planning and zoning in general are, have racist policies.
and one of the things you and I discussed, Carlene, afterwards, and you said, one of the things this did for me is it had me reflect on the fact that our town, there's the same percentage of people of color in this town as when I was a child, as there is now. And again, what I'm asking all of us to do is reflect on why that is. What is it that we can do to make our town more diverse, and have a larger conversation and do our research so we really understand how in the various institutions that we're part of, how that all interplays with race. And that was the intent of my speech. Again, I am so sorry that any of you thought I specifically called anyone on this board racist. I did it in a larger sense of talking about, which there is at the state of Connecticut, in the state of Connecticut, a larger conversation about planning and zoning laws and how that interacts with race.
Where is the state of Connecticut mentioned here?
I'm,
That's, you know, what I'm asking, is that our elected officials, when they speak in public, whether it's official or not, read their speech before they do it and take it from an audience perspective, because I agree, this leads people down that road. And as I said, I do this for a living. I don't need to have a controversial, and I face stuff like this. I'm bringing up something controversial that people don't want. If you Google me, I'm all over now with this board. And now, if you Google it, you'll also get all these Facebook comments, right or wrong. It's there. The damage is done. And I'm seriously considering not being on this board anymore.
I'm sorry that.
And that's, a 35-year professional engineer. I think I bring some value to this board, and I give a lot of stuff that I get paid very well for free to the town of East Haddam. And in response, I feel, so what you feel with all these accusations, what I feel is my name's been tarred. After a 35-year career where I've represented hundreds of clients and controversial things, I've never encountered this.
Again, it was not my intention to call anyone on this board or this board itself specifically racist. My intention was to ask everyone in the audience.
You don't have to repeat it. I'm sick of
I'm-
hearing it.
Okay.
Okay? Luke, forget it. Don't tell me what to do.
Which I also apologize too, and I feel bad that you are feeling like your name has been pulled through the mud. Is there something that you could do? Because I would hate for this board to lose you, because you absolutely do bring a lot to this board. Your experience, your professionalism is beyond. And I would hate anybody in the future to be afraid to join a commission because of any backlash that they might receive. Is there anything that we can do to make this right for you?
I don't know. I'll defer to the board too.
Yeah, I just think we need to, okay, we spoke up, we explained to you the issues, and, I mean, your words are pretty, now that I read this thing, which I never read the whole thing, I mean, being outraged that we allow planning and zoning boards to keep towns predominantly white, zoning's not doing that. Maybe they can't afford, black people can't afford to live here, but neither can a bunch of white people. So this whole thing of racism is getting to me. I mean, I just heard so much of it, it's sickening. You lived your life here, and you see racism in East Haddam?
There is some racism in East Haddam. I've heard it from people.
There must be at least a few people somewhere. But, I mean, I grew up here, my parents grew up here, I never heard a conversation about race ever in my life. There aren't any black people here, there never were. When I grew up, there was one black family here. You think they were keeping them out then before zoning was created? They don't wanna live in the country. They predominantly tend to live in the inner city. The ones that live here, good for them.
I'll tell you what, to back that up too, because I come from a pretty diverse family. My children, my oldest son is Chinese. My next two sons are actually Native American. And one of my Native American sons is dating, a very beautiful African American girl. I have a house in Middletown, I have a house in East Haddam. They could just as easily live in East Haddam, okay, because my son lives with his girlfriend, but they live in my house in Middletown, because it's in the middle of nowhere. They don't want to be in the middle of nowhere. And it has nothing to do with race, it has nothing to do with that she's black and I'm keeping her out. I mean, last night, I keep on encouraging them, I can't wait till they get married and have kids and stuff, so they're, more than likely, that's gonna be my family. And, they're welcome here, but they're very comfortable in Middletown, and it has nothing to do with color. But these are my kids, this is my, my extended family that we're talking about, they can live here just as easily as they can live in Middletown. I own a house in Middletown, I own a house here. has nothing to do with race. It all has to do, with people picking, choosing like their lifestyle. And that plays a larger part into it, and also economics. So, if you look at economics and you look at the lifestyle that people choose, I know the people that grew up in New York City don't like to be in the country. People in the country don't like to be in New York City. I don't like to be in New York City. But there's a lot more involved than just race. Race has nothing to do with it. If anything, economics has more to do with it than anything. If you look at any policy, it's going to be more economical and has absolutely nothing to do with color. Like I said, Will Smith could buy a house anywhere in Connecticut. Nothing's stopping him. He's got the money. And so how does race play into any of this? How does any law or any policy or regulation disregard any races? It doesn't. If anything, it's economic. And also, when you start doing all this research and stuff like that, the reality is people are going to choose where they want to live. And there's nothing in anything that we do that prevents anybody from living here. If they can't economically afford it, that's one thing, but that's not race. It has nothing to do with color. Nothing. There's nothing in anything we do that has anything to do with color or race. It just doesn't. There's so many other factors.
So historically, because of discrimination and racism in America, we see an enormous wealth gap between Black and white communities. Because for the most part, legally into law, a lot of communities of color were kept from owning land. They never inherited anything, and we see, again, enormous wealth gaps. That means that people can't get their feet underneath them and aren't able to buy into various communities. That wealth gap exists. There's documented research around this. The lack of affordable housing, and again, it's not that we have to have large multi-unit apartments. I think 2.3% of our housing stock is considered affordable. When you never inherited anything from a family member, when you were kept, and I can provide, ProPublica did research.
I've never inherited a thing in my life.
But how does that?
I grew up in the South Bronx. My grandparents were born in Puerto Rico. I lived in a diverse neighborhood before it was fashionable for somebody like you. So don't tell me about diversity.
My question to you is, you're spewing out all these facts, but how does that affect planning and zoning? I mean, we're not doing anything. If we can have affordable housing in the town, we would. We don't meet the criteria.
We've looked at.
And we've looked at.
Some of the suggestions that are coming out, that we anticipate coming out with the state push for zoning regulation, if that actually carries through. And we allow, we have affordable housing. It's not deed restricted, because we have enough problems getting developers to develop in the middle of nowhere, rather than restricting their profits. And that, a developer will never do anything without profit. So we don't hit with deed restrictions, but we do have affordable housing. We allow in-law apartments or accessory use apartments with virtually no restrictions. We hit like every one of the ones that the state is contemplating. We already have an ACE test. So our board is anything but racist, yet once again, it's led to, missing an S and we're labeled racist, which the town, the people listening got on Facebook and did.
Teresa, if I lose any member off this board because of your statements, I am going to be so upset. Every member on my commission, or this commission, I should not calling it mine because it's not, it's our commission, brings their own special talents, needs, and knowledge to this commission. We're all elected officials. The town elects us for our knowledge and because we have wanted to volunteer. And I pick out every person on my commission, and they will attest to it, to make sure that they are heard on almost every issue that we discuss. And if I happen to lose one of them, I am going to be sorely unhappy because of statements that were made, generalization statements that you probably didn't realize what you were saying at the time and the ramifications of it. All I ask is just be careful in the future. And if you want to put something in the paper to retract and or to apologize to this commission, it would be greatly appreciated.
I understand that. I'd also, there was research done this past year a series of articles by ProPublica that talked about the intersection of zoning and segregation in Connecticut. And I would like, again, as I was talking, again, using the word hospitals, there's not a hospital in East Haddam. And all of you are asking, how does zoning intersect with race? And since that is a question that many people on this board have just presented, I heard some problematic things this evening too about the character of people of color and whether or not they would choose to live in rural communities. I would implore that all of us kind of, since this question has been brought up, how does this intersect, to look at that research that's been done. Again, my intention was not to specifically say anyone on this board or this board as a whole was racist. I apologize that my words were misconstrued. I think Facebook generally is trying to make it so that our systems are less functional. And and I'm so sorry, Richard, that you are worried about the impacts for your career.
Justin?
To anyone on this board, I'm deeply sorry that is how you feel that you may potentially been impacted. That was not my intention. My intention was for all of us to reflect, and moving forward, again, I don't know how we're going to continue to keep boards and commissions full of volunteers. And again, as a young person, I'm 29. I'm the only young person who attends the majority of meetings and is engaged in town. And one of my largest fears, which I think we're all sharing right now too, is how does Facebook impact municipal government? Because I am dragged through the muck all the time as well on things that I didn't do. And part of what, as elected officials, we're gonna have to deal with is the reality of people putting out false information about us consistently and addressing that within our profession and saying that is false, it's not true. I have no ability to retract that. And I'm with you. I have constantly said I am so grateful to the volunteers that make this town run. And again, my biggest fear is that we won't be able to attract people to boards and commissions. And that's not just related to this. That's the larger conversation about how does social media impact and play with municipal government.
I think the important thing in that, what you're talking about is we cannot be the ones that put out false information. And not that you intentionally did so, but you know, there's a very fine line with what took happen and the perception of what you were trying to say. So, you know, once again, you know, I get it, you get under attack, I think people get under attack and stuff, but I mean, we can't be the ones that put that information out there. We can't be the one to lead people to believe things that just aren't true. We cannot be that entity. That's gonna happen on Facebook no matter what. That cannot come from us. It can't.
But this conversation is happening based on what was happening on Facebook, right? And so,
Well, not just Facebook. Sorry, Carly, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No. It's not just Facebook, it's what Facebook helped promote it, but the rumblings were happening as soon as your speech was made. Calls were being made, people were talking about it. It's just that, you know, social media has a tendency to throw it in everyone's face faster. This would have come out in the paper, I would imagine. Well, it's a pretty liberal paper, but it would have come out and started to damage this commission anyway because of the statement. Whether or not Facebook was there or not.
Blaming Facebook is ducking responsibility
Right.
for the words.
Yeah, you can't blame social media for that.
wait,
Yeah.
I own my words. I gave
Well,
you
It
all a
doesn't sound,
copy.
honestly, it doesn't sound like it.
I gave
We're
you-
here because of Facebook? No, we're here because of your work.
And I gave you all a copy of my words
And we've asked, you know, and we pointed out in several instances how this leads a person who didn't write it and doesn't know the intent of it to a conclusion that put us here. I believe you didn't intend to, but when I read this, I agree with Justin. You're leading people to a conclusion.
Oh,
And the-
other than that, I'd like to just end it with one thing. I pretty much disagree with you about this racism. I mean, you are this guy, I'm telling you. And now that I hear you're 29, more life experience, and you won't think there's racism everywhere, believe me. A lot of us have been around for a while, and lived with black people and everything else. Believe me, you know what we're talking about. Period.
Last comments for anyone, because I think we've kind of beat this apart. Rich,
I guess that makes sense.
Colleen, Rob? Teresa? I mean, we could go on for another half hour, I'm sure, but I don't think we're gonna get anywhere else.
I haven't heard any mea culpas or anything like that.
Yeah, I knew the commission needed to talk to you, and I think that we did.
Yes.
Ed, did you have anything you'd like to add, or?
I just don't think it's a racist thing, because we have all white people in town. I think it's, as Justin said in one other meeting, it's an elitist town, yes. It's expensive to live here. The taxes are a little higher. We don't have the affordable housing that other cities would have. But I don't think everything can be pointed to be racist. I think there's so many other factors that should be considered. And, you know, I gotta agree with Jim. Right now, everybody's looking for every problem is created by racism. It's not. There's a lot of other factors out there. So that's all I'd like to say.
And I'll counter that there is a body of research that that shows the intersection between what we're discussing and race. And I would invite any of you to look into that to see how it intersects, since it has been stated multiple times that it doesn't.
Well, I'm sure there's studies everywhere. You can find studies to prove anything you want.
That you can.
People lie with statistics every day. So if you only look for one cause, you're gonna find it. I worked in the Department of Corrections for 30 years. I worked a lot of successful black people work for that. I don't know. I don't think it's racism. I think it's economics.
And economics
Oh, let's-
and the interplay is also very clear there.
Time work.
What's that?
I said we're just kind of going in a circle.
No, I know, that's
Yeah.
what I just said. I'm just letting everyone finish up, Jim. It's our meeting. Bernie, did you want to add anything?
Just that I think the racial divide was something that started after the war with VA loans and federal home association loans that lent money to white people and did not lend money to black people. And as a result of that, there was redlining, and insurance companies wouldn't insure black people. And this is all something that was totally out of our control, and what we're experiencing now is just the result of that. And I don't think there's any racism per se in this board, but I think that the damage was done years ago, 40s, 50s, and the 60s. And as Rich was saying, we're trying to work around that now in terms of accessory apartments and 3-family homes and stuff in this town. And I think it's going to be a long haul before we can even think about any kind of success here. But
Lou, do you want to add anything?
No, getting back to reinforce what he said, I mean, we don't have sewers, we don't have water, we don't have public transportation. I mean, it's very hard unless you're retired or work in town, or want to get on 95 and drive someplace, to live here. I mean, for minorities to come in, they need all those things, and there's only so much land.
They as in just people from lower economic perspective than us, not necessarily black.
People,
It could be anyone.
Yeah, no, I know.
Years ago, my grandparents had just recently got off the boat. One of their sons came home from the war. They didn't have a pot to piss in. They were Italian. They faced discrimination.
they did.
And yet, 80 years later, here I am in town. And, you know, I don't know if you can blame racists and redlining and stuff. That time has passed.
It's
You
documented.
know,
There's a lot-
I've worked with very successful people of all races. And it is a life choice. You know, my CAD guy back at one company I was at owns 3 houses. He's a young black man. Now, he got pulled over by cops and it's sad and it's wrong and that needs to stop. But he could buy a house in this town tomorrow. He doesn't want to. But he also has, you know, you listen to him and he's talking about his grandfather and his father and his mother. He has an intact family. There's other choices and lifestyles that lead to
I don't
this type
deny,
of stuff.
I don't
We
deny
can't just
that.
pin it on the problems of our grandparents.
Okay, but does that affect us in planning and zoning at this point?
No.
Okay.
So, it does.
Okay, we all set here then? Everyone has said their piece? Teresa, you said your piece? Okay.
And I would also, I think there were very problematic statements made here tonight about what people of color are looking for. And I think.
Well, I mean, no, I made some of those statements, but I'm talking about my own kids. How are my kids problematic? I'm talking about personal
You
experience.
could possibly be wrong with your statements,
Yeah.
right? Is
I'm
that what
feeling
you
a little guilty about
You're
something.
29, you don't know squat. I look back to when I was 29 and believe me, you're just a kid.
Well, the thing is, I'm literally giving you an example of my own children.
I'm not sure what you meant by that, though. Could you explain a little more, because I'm not sure what you meant by that comment.
About what?
That we
Things
said, we
that
made
were
statements that
said.
were problematic.
I heard black people don't wanna live in rural communities was something that was said.
So were you calling them racist right now? That's-
No, I'm saying that there was problematic things said and that, again, I
No,
think.
but here's the thing, nobody here is talking about race, you are. Nobody said black people, we said people in general decide where they wanna live. Nobody here talked about, you know, specific, I mean, we're not concerned about race. We're not concerned about the economics, who wants to live where. And when I brought it up, okay, because I have an African American living in my house in Middletown right now, awesome girl, I'm hoping she gives me grandkids. She doesn't live here, very specifically because it's in the middle of nowhere. I moved here because I wanted to be in the middle of nowhere, and it has nothing to do with any race whatsoever, other than I didn't want to see anybody. You know what I'm saying? I wanted to be out in a very rural area. But that was my choice. Once again, everything that I'm saying literally has nothing to do with color. You know, I'm bringing up the fact, when I'm bringing up that point, okay, I have children of color, you know, who could be living in my house right now, they choose not to. And it's not that I'm saying black people don't want to live in rural areas. I'm saying my kids, you know, live closer to work over Middletown. It's easier, it's more convenient. They don't want to be here. My kids, okay? And that example of my family, they don't want to be here. And so, you know, that kind of bothers me when you say I'm making a problematic statement about black people not want to live in rural areas. People choose where they want to go, regardless, forget color for 1 second. People choose where they want to move to, and they also have to do that based on their financial situation. None of that has anything to do with color. Nobody's saying that black people don't want to live in rural areas. Probably some of them do. And once again, it's not about black. It's not about white. It's about individual choices, what you're used to, where you grew up. And people who have the financial means, regardless of any color, can move here. And I think everyone here has backed that up explicitly. So nobody's saying black people don't want to live here, okay? Other than if they have the financial means and people aren't flocking here, and they may be of other races, it's got nothing to do with us. It's got nothing to do with us. So nobody's making that statement that black people don't want to move here, okay? You know, you're bringing up race. People move here if they want to move here. If this suits their lifestyle, or this is where they want to go, or they have the financial means, regardless of race, they're going to make those choices. I'm not making choices for anybody. I'm not dictating who thinks what or how they think, or what color they are.
All set, Justin?
That's bothersome that you keep on referring back to that.
You all set?
I am.
Okay, let's move on. Okay, thank you very much, select persons, for coming and joining us this evening.
I have a work meeting, so I'm gonna have to excuse myself. Thank
I'm
you
sorry?
all. I have a work meeting
Okay.
that started, so I have to excuse myself. Again, thank you for inviting me
Yep.
to come
We appreciate you coming.
do the
Can you have down here regulation review of agricultural regulations? So we'll put that on to our next meeting?
Yep, because
Okay.
the Ag Commission hasn't reported back to me about the modifications that I discussed with them.
Okay. Anything on the CEO?
Other than you asked for a printout of some of my active zoning enforcement.
Yeah.
I also included last year's and this year's general zoning permits, just to give you an idea of what's been going on. And as Lou noted, lots of pools. You know, yeah, they're run-down pools, they
They're
are.
all in-ground?
No, there are multiple, they're in-ground,
Yeah, because it
above
seems to
ground.
be more popular now, the ones that are above ground, they build decks around them.
Well, the above ground ones, they're less expensive and they're, again, like he said, they're available. The other ones are precast forms that they, sometimes, just lay it, they're running out. I've been told by pool guys that,
You don't
yeah,
pay tax on the above ground ones, do you?
hey, I think you do, cause you do it permit.
It's a lot less than.
Okay. Because the in-ground ones reduce your property values.
Yeah, well, I'm not interested in the pool, it sounds like work.
Best place for a pool is your neighbor's yard.
Say
Jim,
that
have
again?
you heard from the finance commission
Your
office
neighbor's
yet
yard.
on
The open space,
yeah,
yeah,
thank you.
pass that around, circle. I circled and put in blue what was the balance left on the open space loan.
600, no, 700 and.
Plus, yeah, plus the interest, yep, would be 716,691.
How much did we initially,
Well, we had a bond authorization, but we have, out of the 5 million, we have about 720,000 left out of the bond authorization. So this is paid down over $4 million worth of acquisitions since 2000, what is it, 2000? Maybe before that.
so how much are we paying a month on this? How do we do it?
Those are annual payments.
Annual payments?
The one, like you can see 195 and the 14 on interest, that's what will come up for 2001. And there's less interest next year and less, it,
Okay,
works its way down. Same thing with she had this on the same sheet with the, middle school,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else for CEO?
Yeah.
Okay, in your package, you got the information on the airport. EDC has invited planning and zoning to attend their meeting next Thursday. It will be the 3rd. The subcommittee that the selectmen's office had put together is going to be there, and they would like to hear from EDC and planning and zoning on our thoughts and input on the airport. And
Where's that?
it'll be here, in both rooms,
Time?
7 o'clock, okay? We could have done it in writing, but we really didn't have the time. I think in person would be a much better format. I did call Mr. Kasner, and he said, I have a meeting, I have both rooms. It'll work out for us all to be able to attend it at that time. Bob will be running the meeting. We will have to call our commission to order. But other than that, Mr. Kasner, it will be his meeting. And Tony will be coming to, for us. I asked, you're all set, thank you. Jim, you don't need to be there?
Okay.
So,
That's next Thursday, that's.
yeah, it'll be the 3rd, September 3rd. It's next Thursday, yeah.
Couple of questions.
Yep.
Who wrote the conservation easements for the airport?
Mellon and his attorney, Hudson Campbell.
Hudson Campbell.
Yes. You need a copy of it?
Yeah, sure.
I can make a PDF and send it
Because
to
I
everybody.
have both copies. Yeah, if you can get it out to them.
And,
Conservation easement was divided up, well, let me backtrack. It was written with the Connecticut Gateway Commission, Connecticut River Gateway Commission, Campbell Hudson, and DEP, because DEP were the people who ended up with the conservation easement.
state, yeah.
Yeah, the state did, along with heavy-handed input from the Gateway Commission, since it lies in the Gateway. Harvey Thomas and Emmett Lyman were sitting on that commission at the time.
So these separate pieces of property on the 57 acres? The easements that are,
The easement is only for the airport.
but there's two.
Now, the
No,
second
it's,
easement,
he wrote it, he had the one easement and then he did another easement
Overlap,
overlap.
Okay.
Pretty much it's the same easement, but his,
different language.
not really, it's just that this way,
You
if
wanna
the state does not follow through, he has a body set up that will take care of it at
There's a
that point.
caveat, yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
he has the money to do it.
In the airport that was mentioned in this article, that the state spent $7.7 million on, and the town only had to pay $100,000? What airport was that?
I don't know.
Oh,
Page 4?
that may happen, was that the Griswold Airport down in Madison?
Oh, okay, that explains it.
You have to remember, don't forget, the airport here was never run for profit.
No,
Not at all. And if you look at it that way, you're blindsided.
I'm surprised it existed this long.
You know, it was a private airport, and you have to and you have to keep that in mind when you're looking at it. He never ran it for profit. He didn't have to. So hopefully everyone can make it to that meeting. And I think that's all I have. Do you have anything else?
the next public hearing that we have scheduled
Yep, I talked to you, I remember, I said, how long you need
is
to notice
the
it?
8th with Banner.
Have they talked to the residents?
I know they've sent mailers to them all because of COVID. They did do mailings. I don't know what they've done since. I was gonna call Attorney Bennett and see what the latest and greatest is.
Are we opening all the town hall area?
So by that time,
That's the gentleman asked, right there.
well,
The 31st, we plan on opening the building of this month. So, but we still have to maintain mask wearing and social distancing,
Yeah,
so.
but we can go in and see something.
Do we want,
So does this mean the selectmen's meetings are now gonna be open?
They'll be open, again, with limited numbers, it depends on which side of the room, if we have a full room, we could have 20 people, if, be a smaller room like this, we'll have,
Well, normally, for a selectman, you have both. We normally have both. I'm just surprised that we didn't tonight.
the last banner we had.
Oh, we couldn't fit
5 and 50, which won't fit here?
50 to 70 people were here for that
We
one.
need to move to the,
No.
There wasn't enough room for Banner.
so what we've done is we already, before the decision was made to open it, the first public hearing notice that went out had this typical, it'll be YouTube and email your questions in. The change now for this room allows 25. By the time I eliminate the 9 plus 2 staff, so we have 11, plus 2 people for the application is 13. That means I got the balance out of the 25. And what the Board of Ed's been doing is putting a RSVP till that limit point, and then the rest of it will have a YouTube and email. So I instructed Nancy today to, and I talked to Attorney Willis, I said, you know, we did this initially not knowing, now we know. He goes, that's okay, you can revise the second public hearing notice to have that wording in there. And so if we, you know, take in those numbers, then, you know, if the room is full, based on that, I'll set it up so that there's only so many chairs spaced out and stack the rest, and it's kind of like assigned seating spread out along the floor, just like we did here today. And we'll do it.
Well, I'm assuming that both parties are gonna want a certain number of people here. I mean, the applicant, he's gonna have, we gotta find out how many he's gonna
And
have.
that's why tomorrow's phone call with,
And,
They'll fill the room.
he's gonna show them.
I guess my question, I mean, they're gonna be here at our next meeting. Do we need to have the police here?
That was not our question. Have you cleared up any of this, do you know that?
I don't know, I'm gonna find
You don't
out,
know anything
no.
about that? Okay.
No. I
Because the
mean,
last meeting, we had to have the police.
Maybe straighten something out, but
mhm.
apparently not, right?
I don't know, and I will let them know
If you
that,
feel you'd like one, I can have an office.
I would, Rob, I don't know what's gonna happen. I appreciate the last time. We don't know. I hate to spend the money, but God forbid something happens.
Not a problem.
Thank you.
Are we gonna get more details on that application?
that's up to the applicant. I can't, you know.
Okay,
Well,
don't have much to go by.
it's the same wording change, or?
The wording's
Yeah,
the
it's
same.
only zoning changes.
It's a zone change at this point, that's the problem.
Oh, it's the
What
same.
they're only asking for the potential, instead of limiting it to 4 units per building, to increase it to using pre-existing large structures to convert to, you know, so that's the way it's worded.
So they changed the word.
No, they didn't change the wording at all. Period. Did not change the wording at all.
So they're right back doing the same thing?
Well, maybe they've got a better explanation. You know,
Additional units.
Did it just say additional units, or did they say 8 units?
I don't have it in.
no, it was,
I don't know.
it was 16 units.
16.
And we don't know if they've sat down and talked yet.
I don't know that.
Who's
No.
the president of their association up there?
Mike Callahan.
Is it Callahan?
I thought it was, but I don't
Yeah.
think so.
Now, would I be able to reach out to him or not?
No.
Okay.
I'm gonna reach out to them and say,
Get someone
Rob,
to reach out to them.
I think Rob already has, you know, while I was on vacation,
But
said that.
suggested that they select a few people to come that wanna present their case, and the
Yeah.
rest of the people will have to, watch by YouTube, call in or email or whatever, and if they have questions ahead of time, they can submit it, and the people that are here can ask the questions, so.
Because we put this out farther than it had to be for them to try to resolve things, and that's what we're hoping, and we haven't. I mean, can we keep on pushing it out?
No, we already set the public hearing. We set the public hearing, and once the public hearing starts, you know, that it's 35 days to complete the public hearing. They could request an extension, so we'll just
Or
have
we
to see what
could
happens.
open it and close it, and if we don't feel that the public, you know, that they, and just stonewall it that way.
Well,
We could look at the application, make sure it's got all the points that it's supposed to be looking at,
Why,
and
yeah,
deem it a
but-
non-compliant application, right? An incomplete
no,
application.
it's language, it's just language, it's not a site plan, it's not a.
No, but aren't they, they're supposed to look at how it impacted the town, that's one of the reasons we denied it last time, because they did it. They just
We
got up
didn't
and
deny,
said-
we did not deny.
we
it.
were going to.
They withdrew it.
Right,
So,
we were
so
going
I
to.
think
But
the
a lot
best,
of the reason was.
I think
they
the
didn't
best
do
thing
stuff.
is to open the public hearing, let them make their presentation, take the questions, and make the decision based on the evidence that presented on the 8th, and maybe even the following meeting or whatever it needs to be. It's just, you know,
Well, time comes, it's gotta be dealt with, so.
Yeah, it has to be dealt
Yeah.
with. We're just trying to push them along, okay.
Oh, one more thing. Porgy's Road, that, they took that house down? Porgy's
Yeah,
Road?
it's gone.
Oh, the house on the ferry right there, really?
Do you know anything about that? Are they gonna,
yes,
Bill?
okay, now I know what you're talking about, yeah, the vacant one in the corner. Yeah, they tried to rebuild it. And
yeah, are they gonna come back with an application?
Building
or-
I just talked to them last week and they said, well, it's an existing structure, we're just gonna build what's there. I said, no, you need to put together a real site plan, investigate septic and all that, otherwise you're dead in the water.
Okay.
So they're hiring a surveyor and an engineer to go.
All they
through
gotta
that.
do is prove septic, right?
Well,
They can build there on the footprint.
Pretty much.
yeah, they pretty much, but it's
It's
existing.
now that they've got the right
So-
to rebuild.
So in reality, if they cannot, under the public health code, demonstrate 100% compliance, they can repair to as best is for the number of bedrooms that was in the house that was taken down.
Mhm.
So that they can do, yes,
Okay.
but I said, you gotta tell us what's out there now and where it is. I said, I said, you got a great opportunity, with well, septic separation, do all those things.
Go in there and demo the place before they figure out what they're doing, they just went in there and.
Oh, no, they went in to try to
Oh, they
reconstruct.
tried to rebuild it.
They tried to rebuild.
Been down that road a couple of years ago.
And Bill got in there and said, so what are you accomplishing? Yeah, it was toast, yeah. Yep,
Thanks.
Okay, anything else?
Motion to adjourn.
Mr. Govens,
Motion to adjourn?
do I have a second?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
All in favor? Okay, thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Vote to oppose adjourning.
He did.
You can stay if you want, I want to.
But you know, they have an